This is the Backlog Exposed podcast with Kevin Lane and Joel Rubel, bringing you weekly discussions on gaming as well as quick insights into sports, entertainment, and anything else that they can think of.
A little bit of something.
Be sure to check out the backlogexposed.com, where you can listen to the podcast and get links to Twitter, Discord, YouTube, and Facebook.
I'm Joe.
I'm Kevin.
And we are
The Backlog
Exposed. Yeah!
Now, gear up and get ready because this backlog is about to be exposed.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode number 54 of the Backlog podcast. I almost said Backlog Exposed, Joe, but we're already exposed. We don't need to be exposed anymore.
We need to get out of that habit.
Yeah, we just need to be a podcast. We just need to talk to people, let them know what we're doing, what we're talking about, what we're looking at. And today, we're recording over a two days. Today is the 13th. We're going to do some more recording tomorrow on the 14th of May. And but the reason...
Yeah!
yeah.
My app running and all these buttons.
That's 100% okay. Hey, so we're a bunch of sound bites right now. Joe and I are like back in the day when you first learned about emojis, and you just start sending people like, "Hey, look, I found a thumbs up emoji and a poop emoji," and that's us with these sound bites right now. We're having fun with it. But so today we have a kind of a special episode. For those of you who have been listening to us for a while, you know Joe and I talk a bit about game reviews, and we get into like what a score is on a game and shit like that, obviously, right? I mean, that's what a game review means. And for so long, both of us have had such a hard time wrapping our heads around how do you truly review games in this day and age. I mean, when you can look at a game like Super Meat Boy, which you can get on the Switch or, on multiple platforms, but it's like this 8-bit game that may or may not have cost a ton of money to make, and it's ranked really high, right? And then you can take God of War, this masterpiece that took millions of dollars to make. Everywhere you go, these two games are on the same playing field, and it just doesn't seem right. It just doesn't seem right to me that you can have such totally different development teams and tools and money that goes into it, but at the end of the day, you go to Metacritic or you go to IGN and everything ends up being the same score, 1 through 10, or this or that. So Joe, what do you think when you hear that, right? When you hear about game reviews, don't you have the same type of?
Man, it's not based on. You can't compare a racing game to a fighting game.
Yep.
So you got to stay within your genre, and you also have to stay within. Is the game free? Is it $5, $10? You can't compare a $5 game to a $60 game. Person behind the article, writing the paper or writing the review, that's what they need to do, and that's what I would rather see is they're going to compare it to a $20 game to a $20 game, a free game to a free game, not a game you can go buy for $5 and it's going to be a 9 out of 10, the same way God of War is. I mean, that game was phenomenal. I played that game day one.
Oh, 100%. But then, and Joe, if you could get a little bit closer to the mic too, because your audio compared to our guest today is a bit different, so I need you close. But I just want to say real quick to that point, now we have AAA titles, or what people are calling AAA titles, are free. When you have a game like, Fortnite, which, we would scoff about a year ago about that being a AAA title, but let's be fair, it's the most grossing game ever. So it gets to decide if it's AAA, and it's free to a point, right? So all this stuff is going on, and now we still have game reviews to handle. And I've been trying to wrap my head around the right way to do it. Joe, I know we've both talked about this quite a bit, and I've reached out to people in the industry, our friends over at Play PSVR, the podcast, and some guys over that way. We all have the same feeling. Like, we just don't know the right way to do this, but we kind of do the best we can. And so all of a sudden, all this discussion behind the scenes is happening, and Joe runs into somebody. Joe, can you set us up with who we ran? Well, I guess we don't know who we ran into, but can you set us up with what you ran into And where are we at today?
Basically, I was on Reddit and I posted just a little generic blimp about World War Z, and how I said that the game has some potential. They just need to do a little extra work to it. You know what I mean? And I just got a message from this guy, and he wrote back and was like, "Yeah, man, it's fantastic, and this is what it is. This is what it is." And I'm like, "All right, cool." And then he sent me a link to this review, and to be honest, I thought I was looking at like a review from like IGN or a review from a professional company, because I didn't put two and two together that this guy actually wrote it, and I was taken back because it was actually really well done.
So who is this guy? I mean, you must know a ton about him and a whole bunch of details.
Our
right?
listeners is going to learn just as we are. That's how it works sometimes.
That's right. So who is it? Who do we got?
Well, he calls himself the Spy.
The Partisan Spy.
The Partisan Spy.
Exactly. No one knows me and no one will.
So, as Joe said, right, he sees this review. It's amazing. Has some conversation with the man known as the Partisan Spy. He has a Twitch page, or a Twitch handle that you can go watch him. He plays games, he reviews them, and he goes into a hell of a lot of detail. We're not talking about, I played it for 5 minutes and I didn't like it, so I give it a D, or it's a 20 out of 100, or whatever. No, there's this detailed breakdown, and Spy has been working with the community to come up with a format and a system that somehow can encompass a free game or a $60 or $70 game into the same scale and come up with a number that actually works. And price point and captivity, or what the right words are, I don't know, but like, how intrigued and enjoying, how much you're enjoying the game, everything factors into this review. And after watching him for a little bit on his Twitch stream, the _partisan_spy, I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong here in a moment, but after watching him and seeing how he does it, there's a method behind the madness. And so what you're about to hear, we're going to give him a moment to speak a little bit about himself, but what you're going to hear is someone who is going anonymously through this process of reviewing games. He does not want to be known because it's not about him. It's about the process, and it's about the system itself, and working to come up with a system that's not going to be overrun by the corporate overlords who decide what goes on IGN and what makes it to the top of Twitch and this and that. This system is he's doing it himself, but he's integrating the players and the other people who actually have a say into the mix, and so he's refining his process. So I want to set you up and warn you, he's using a voice changer. This is not his real voice, if you haven't noticed already. And we haven't heard his real voice. You're not going to hear his real voice, but he's part of the team. He's going to be doing reviews on our website, and those reviews are going to be tweeted out. You're free to share them. You're free to look at them. You're free to provide feedback, but read them, because so far what we've seen, the time and effort, Joe, that he has put into this, and the system, it's just getting started.
Yeah, it's pretty phenomenal. I'm not going to lie.
And right before we get to the Partisan Spy, we're going to take a quick break, share with you one of the podcast partners we've run into, Thornvale Podcast, and then we're going to jump back in and we're going to get right to it.
La da da da, la da da da, dee da la bee da la boom boom, la da da da, la da da da, dee da la bee da la boom boom, la da da da, dee da la bee da la boom boom.
Thornvale is a narrative-driven actual play podcast following 3 monster hunters as they fight to keep a small town in Florida safe from the creatures that threaten it. It's full of action.
I'll be like, I'll distract him, you get him. And so I'm going to try...
Okay, Bjorn, how are you going to get him? Comedy.
I just got this image in my head, now this is me, not Sammy, of this dragon that was collecting materials for a chicken farm.
And truly awful dice rolls.
Nope, another 3. That's my second 3 in a row.
Oh my gosh.
If that sounds like it's up your alley, then look us up wherever you listen to podcasts.
Yeah!
Well, without further ado, let's introduce you, Spy, and if you could tell the audience a little bit about yourself, what got you to where you're at today, why you started, and what you plan on doing, how's this going to evolve?
Well, about myself, you won't hear nothing, that's for sure. What I can tell you is about my motivation and why I'm doing this. As you guys said, there is a habit on the market that is actually bad for the gaming scenario, which is the badges, right? Every game goes for every publisher, they give a copy, and they ask for rating. And what does this rating mean for us gamers that spend our money buying the game, right? It means nothing. But the fact is that it does influence us on making our purchase decision. So based on that, I started developing evaluation methodology to enable us gamers to understand the game in depth before we buy them, right? Why should we buy a game without understanding if we're going to like it or not? So I started working on this 2 months ago, and from starters, I decided that I shouldn't do this alone. So every evaluation I publish, I share it in Reddit. And trust me on this, Redditors are not really nice people, let me put it this way. They really criticize and say toxic things about my work. But this is good, because I have been changing the methodology and how I evaluate games in a speed that I wouldn't do it without this criticism. It's basically this. And that's it. Do you guys have any questions?
Well, I have a couple of comments, and I want to bounce some things off of Joe too, because you said something that kind of hit home a little bit, in that, you know, people online are criticizing your work, but you're handling it different than most people do, and I like that. You're not firing back at the people who are criticizing you. You're adapting, and the one caution I would say is don't adapt too much, or you'll end up being Fortnite making changes every 2 seconds, as opposed to, you know, keeping a system that people can expect. You know, at one point or another, you know, you're in charge of this, even though the community's helping out. You know, this is your thing.
Well, you know, one thing too, though, I think a lot of those people that are backlashing at him are probably people that wasted their money.
Yeah.
And they can't call the developers and cuss them out or say, hey, you assholes, this game sucks. So they're like, oh, this guy wrote a review about it. He gave it this. I'm going to, you know, lash out at him about it. That's really what a lot of those guys are.
Yeah, what I'm trying to do is to find common grounds, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, when you're talking about games, think about it. There's no right or wrong.
There's not. You're right. There is no right or wrong. You're absolutely right.
If you're having fun, it doesn't matter with what game. If you're having fun and you can play 500 hours having fun with that game, that's your game. You know? So when I say I'm looking for common grounds, what I mean is that even though I'm doing the evaluation of the game, the final piece will allow every gamer to make their score about the game. Because I'm doing an open methodology, you know? Mm-hmm. So, for example, there's a really easy example about this. Game prices changes, right? And it changes depending on region, depending if it's a new game or if it's a one-year game. Yeah, like special edition, exactly. So when I do the evaluation, there is one of the variables is the price, right? Because the price is a variable that makes you decide if you want to buy it or not the game.
Exactly.
It's a universal variable for everything, if you think about it. So today the price point of a game is $60. Okay, so you will lose X points, right? And the next 2 months, they make a sale. So the price change, so he loses less points, right? So the way I'm working and building up this evaluation system, allows you to go back and redo it. And you can put your perspective as a gamer, because everybody is different. Everybody has different opinions and different tastes about everything. So
you know what would be great, and not to cut you off here, but to that point, I've never seen a site with a dynamic rating system, right? So there's sites out there that map the prices of games. psprices.com is a great example of one, and I think they have them for every system. But the average price of that game is a common knowledge term that can be pulled and extracted from the internet, right? What if your template, or when you're, this is something to talk about in the future, but what if your rating can be posted in such a way that the price itself is pulled from the internet, and that rating will change as the price changes, so that, say that the price is a factor in that final score, and then that price goes down, or the game ends up going free to play or something. Well, now you've got the same game, but it's free to play. Maybe that score and the valuation should change, and so that's just something to think about as your process progresses. But that'd be something else, wouldn't it? Like,
yeah, for sure. I mean, there's no limits. Another example, I evaluated the Dissidia Final Fantasy NT, and there was a version that was for free and a version that was paid. I paid because I wanted to evaluate the whole package, right? But the fact is, I mean, if the game is free and you can try it, I mean, this is a game changer, right? I mean, if you have the opportunity to try and play 3 hours of a game, go for it. You never know.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of times too, if you look at reviews, they'll have reviews of the game up before the game's released, and damn good and well the majority of these companies writing these reviews watch the same gameplay we watched during launch or E3 or PAX East, and they're writing a review on the 5 hours of gameplay they saw.
Yep.
That's how the majority of these reviews are being written. I mean, you're not going to sit there and have a review guy.
You talking about Anthem?
What's that?
You talking about Anthem?
Yeah, exactly. That they blew that game up like it's going to be the best, and then the game flopped, man. I mean, the majority of these reviews, it's all they're doing is watching trailers.
You know what's the problem? You know what's the biggest problem? It's that there's no criteria.
There's no criteria.
There's no criteria. I mean, the criteria is an individual criteria. I mean, I think, like a publisher, I think is a 5-star, and then the other publisher says, I think is a 4-star. If you go to a hotel, okay, and it's a 5-star hotel, you know why it's a 5-star, because there's a criteria. Only hotels with this and this and this and that thing can be a 5-star hotel, right?
Yep.
I mean,
that goes back to the beginning when Kevin was talking about that weird game for the Switch or whatever, and was comparing it to
Super
God
Meat
of
Boy.
War. Yeah, just the name alone can automatically tell you it's not on the same playing field as God of War.
Yeah, but I want to go back to that example. And when you think about genders and modes, I believe, and my methodology, the way I evaluate brings us up, I believe that this is before the evaluation. I think that these are playing conditions, right?
Yeah,
I mean, if you don't like shooting games, don't even look at it. Right?
Yes.
I mean, you don't like it.
That was the first thing I noticed, Spy, was when I was looking at your thing, the layout, the path your eyes take as you go across this thing, it tells you right away, am I going to like this game? Like, is this a genre I'm going to like? Is this a type of game I'm going to like? In a world where there are thousands of games to play on the current systems, no matter what system you got, and there's sales every week, and they're just ridiculous. You buy a $60 game and it's $40 2 weeks later because it didn't do so well in the initial launch or whatever. All of these different things, and you go online and you look at the IGNs and the Metacritics and all these different websites. You can't get a good picture, right? I love Twitch because of this. I use Twitch to baseline a game to gauge if I'm going to like a game or not. I was watching you play Rage 2 today, and it's a game I've been looking forward to for a while now. And based off of the stuff I see, I will determine whether I'm going to buy it or not. Days Gone is another classic example. I was hesitant because of what happened with Anthem. We hyped up Anthem on this show because we both got to play in the beta and the alpha, and we loved it. But then all of a sudden the game comes out and it's trash because they didn't do everything that they needed to for the 10 years they spent developing the damn thing. And so, I think more gamers should be hesitant to purchase games. And like you just said, this isn't the evaluation itself. This is a pre-evaluation. It's to say, hey, when you walk in the door, I played this game for 25 hours. This is my experience. This is the fun I had playing it. And you personally have a specific style of games that excite you. If you threw in Barbie Mattel PS3, you might not enjoy it as much, and so your experiences are going to be different than someone who might love that particular game. But this baseline...
Then you're talking about a skill that every evaluator needs to have. He needs to put his shoes into the person that at least liked the genre and the mode of the game. Or you will always evaluate, or your evaluation will never, or you'll limit yourself, right?
Yeah.
For example, the first game I evaluated was Dawn of Man, and I'm not a fan of the genre or nothing, but I could see that in that game, people that love the genre, they will have fun,
Yep.
So...
I look at it like this, and I think I mentioned it to you in the chat before we got on here, so the other day, and I've probably said it on the podcast before, but like I'm a Freddy Krueger fan. When I was growing up, it was my favorite horror thing, just everything about Freddy Krueger. I was a big fan, and they came out with a new Freddy Krueger with the guy that played Rorschach from the original the Watchmen movie, and I thought he did a hell of a job. I thought it was good enough, for the continuation of the series. But one of the top critiques of that movie, if you looked at her profile, she hated the movie. She trashed it, and it got so, her exposure was so high that everyone was pointing to her review, like, look at this game. This movie's trash. This movie's no good. But her favorite movie was Brokeback Mountain. Mm-hmm. And so how do you take someone who likes movies like Brokeback Mountain, put them in front of Freddy Krueger raping children and getting burned alive, and say, give us a review, and we're going to use your review to tell all the people who like Freddy Krueger how good this movie is? It just doesn't make sense.
Exactly. She's not a good evaluator.
Yep. But people buy it, and there's politics behind everything, and one of the concerns I always have with game review sites is the politics behind it. What's funneling the money? Look at what happened. Anthem is just such a classic example. EA has a big presence in the world of gaming, and they have such a bad taste. Everyone makes fun of it, of EA as a company, and yet they still dominate the selling. They still sell like crazy, and so.
How many gamers lost money with Anthem, right?
Yeah. And so how do you get past that? And I think that when you look at a system like yours that is adaptable, this is why I want you, and Joe wants you to be part of what we do, because we're passionate gamers. Our whole Backlog podcast was based off of the idea that we buy so many games, we play so many games, and we'll spend the money so that you may not have to, or so that you should, or whatever, because the listeners here are gonna know the kind of games we like to play, and so we're not gonna go review Barbie Mattel's 3D world. It's not gonna happen, and so the people listening here are gonna know. But also, if there's a system where people who love that type of genre can review properly, there's gotta be a way.
Exactly.
And I think you're tapping into it. I really do.
That's a perfect point.
Hey, you're talking about Days Gone, man. I'm watching this stream right now. Days Gone looks awesome.
You should buy it.
I would like to go back to a point, which is the how games are evaluated today in such a short term. And sometimes you know that the person just plays 1 or 2 hours of the game.
Yep.
But the fact is that when someone buys a game, his expectation is not the first or the second hour. His expectation is down there on the 20, on the 30 hours of game. So that's why every game I play 25 hours, because I want to feel what a gamer may feel when it gets to the 20 hours.
I got to tell you, that's a hell of a commitment. And if people don't recognize... And it's in the 20 hours that you discover this game is a good game, this game is a bad game. Now, do you force yourself to go through, say a game doesn't have 25 hours of content? I mean, say it's a 40-hour game, but, 15 hours in, it's just, you've determined it's trash. Are you going to continue to power forward and do the 25? Is that a set number for you, or is it not necessarily about that as much as...
For example, the evaluation I did to the Final Fantasy, I only played 3 hours.
Yeah.
Because it was impossible to play the game. It was impossible to play the game. It's always disconnected. You couldn't find matches.
Yep.
So I had to stop playing.
But when I'm talking about like, say you're playing Anthem. Say Anthem's on your list, right? And that's a game that has unlimited content. You could play it for 200 hours. You get 10 hours in, and this is not going to get a good score, and the hours played is no longer impacting the score you're going to give it. I'm just trying to ask because of, we're talking about this being a universal type platform. Some people don't even have 25 hours in a month or a year to play video games. So what can others seek? Is this adaptable in that way, or do you see it being something that we really should only review some of these games if we have the time to do so?
Well, when you build up a way of evaluation and a methodology, you need to set patterns, right? Because imagine in 12 months, and I have evaluated 50 games. I want to compare them, right?
Yep.
I want to compare them to see between the 50 games which one performed better, which one performed better on this aspect or in other aspects. So the 25 hours is there because the max points that a game can get is 1,000 points, right? So if I don't do the 25 hours, you won't be able to get that 1,000 points. But if I'm playing and I'm feeling bored, right, or anxious, or hopeless, or asking myself why I'm playing this, the game is losing points.
Yep.
Right? So it's part of the evaluation. I mean, of course, it's in one or other occasion, maybe I'll have to stop playing, like this Cydia, right? But the objective and the goal is to do the 25 hours. Exactly to feel how a gamer would feel while playing the game.
Nice.
And another important part of the evaluation is that I never finish with only one advice. I always give 5 different advices, right?
Yep. Oh yeah, I like that too.
And the condition for that advice, right? So there are 5 things you can decide about the game. You won't buy it. You will play it if it's free. You will buy it at a discount. You will buy it. Or it's a game that's considered 500-hour game. It's a game that you will play like for the next whole year, right? So based on these options, I give advices.
I like that.
Pretty awesome. That's awesome.
So I know that so Joe's got to get going here. So what I want to do is, this is not going to be the last time you hear from the Partisan Spy on this podcast if I have anything to say about it and if Joe has anything to say about it. We have to figure out why the site did not tweet out his latest game evaluation of World War Z. Sorry. And so we're going to figure that out, and we're going to tweet out his evaluation that you can find if you look for him online. He has his own Imager.com user profile, Imager.com/user/thepartisanspy. You can find him. Is it on Twitter? Is it the Partisan Spy, or is there underscores or anything like that?
Underscores. The underscore partisan. The underscore spy.
Okay. And Partisan is...
Sorry. This is on Twitch. On Twitter is Partisan Spy.
Okay.
At Partisan Spy.
At Partisan Spy. And Partisan is Partisan. So for those of you who are sitting here trying to write it down and keep track and all that, I'm going to set up a little post or something and a profile page in the next day or so for him on our website so that you can have a better understanding of, what he's putting together, what we've been talking about here today, a place where you can go and follow him. We are... really super excited to be working with him and have him sharing some of the stuff he's been working on with us and our listeners. And, Partisan, we look forward to more of this and glad we finally got everything sorted out from the audio perspective. And, Joe, what's your final thoughts here on this? I mean, I'm super excited. What about you?
Yeah, man, this was an easy 30. We were trying to come in for a 10-minute session, and this is an easy 30 minutes. So, this is... I can see these podcasts going places even further now, man, with just the fact that you have somebody that's willing, to sit back and write these reviews, which, I've tried, you've tried. I just don't have time. It takes.
I don't have the skill set. I'm not as good. There's people who have it, and when you read over Partisan Spies,
I'm not that good either, man. I've tried writing stuff, and it sounds like my 6-year-old son wrote it. So
yeah, no, I do have one last question.
Though, I'll play the games, Partisan, and by God, I'll give you all the information you need. If you don't get to your 25 hours, let me know. I'll play the game.
Hell yeah. I do have one question for you, Spy, on the availability you have to do this type of stuff. So I know myself, I couldn't dedicate 25 hours a week or a month to something specific like that. I like to play a lot of different games, and so my backlog is so overloaded that I would never be able to do something like at the level you're doing it, which is why this is so awesome that you can and are. But if we say to the developers out there, send your codes our way, we're going to get this stuff in front of the spy and he's going to take a true look at it. What type of availability do you have for this type of thing? Is this something that you want them to start pouring in, or do you want people to select it, or do you want to select if we ask developers to reach out to us or reach out to you directly to review their games and things like that? How do you want to work that if we start getting that type of attention?
Well, today I do this as a hobby, but how did I get to this point? How did I go to this point where I am? I can't tell about my personal life, but what I can tell you is that I'm able to do what I'm doing because my professional background allows me. So I'm not doing this out of nothing and because I think I know. I'm doing this because I know how to do it, And I studied a lot. I mean, there's a lot of academic background poured in these evaluations.
Yep.
And this also allows me to do things faster, right? I mean, if you have the skill sets to do an infographic and you know how to do it, you will do faster than someone that don't know how to do it, right? So all of this allows me to do this as a hobby, but of course, that's everybody wants to make their hobby their profession, right? That's the perfect job.
Fair enough.
So this is something that I love to do, and if I'm able to do more, I want to do more.
Yep. Well, I have no doubt that as the exposure for you gets out there, game developers are going to want to get their games in front of you because, when I worked in testing and software testing and things like that, true developers want to find the kinks in their system and their software, right? They want people to really play their games. If you're going to spend 25 hours, a real developer wants people to spend 100 hours, 200 hours in their game. So they're going to want to get this stuff in front of you. And I hope that if any developers or people who know developers are listening, please reach out. This is a time-consuming thing, so don't hesitate to reach out. Get your game in front of us. Joe, myself, and Spy, we're all willing to test games. You're going to get a little different experience from all of us, but we're all going to provide feedback. Some of it's going to be verbal, some of it's going to be written, and then you're going to get some of this detailed stuff that is truly a goldmine for a developer or a publisher. I mean, it just absolutely, this guy's going places, and we're glad to have him as part of the team here. And so, Any final words, Joe, from you?
No, I'm good. It was finally glad to meet you, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, my final words. I'm happy to be with you guys. I mean, this is a beginning of a big project. I truly believe in everything that we talked about.
Yep.
And I just started today the evaluation for Rage 2. My goal is to deliver it this weekend. So before buying it, wait for my evaluation, and I'm sure that you will save money or make a perfect purchase.
Hell yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Awesome. Well, we're going to wrap up Spy. We really appreciate it. Look forward to working with you, bud.
Thanks, man.